Hello, and welcome to our fifth Infor TechTV Live. In this session, we'll be discussing the topic of decision intelligence for Industry 4.0. My name is Mike Bradshaw. I'm an industry evangelist here at Infor, and I'll be your host for this session. I want to welcome our audiences from YouTube and LinkedIn as we're simultaneously broadcasting on both platforms. If you're not familiar with how lives work, the idea is for this to be an interactive, fun, and engaging session. We've got a panel of experts joining me today that will help us understand today's topic. But the really interesting content usually comes from our live audience, and you can direct the conversation by using the chat function to post your questions and thoughts to the panel. If you are an Infor employee or an Infor partner joining the call, please keep the chat lines open for others. We want to make sure their questions are given priority. And before we go any further, and because this is a live session, I do need to post a disclaimer. Any number of topics may come up about roadmap, future products, and just to be clear, we're not making any promises in this session. And with that out of the way, let's get to know our experts. So, Rana, would you like to introduce yourself first, please?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Rana Jalani, Manager Solution Consulting with Infor. I have been here for 4.5 years now. And before I came to the dark side, I was on the customer side for 20 plus years doing data warehousing and BI. So I have dabbled with a variety of tools and technologies. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Rana. Chris Griffith, can you go next?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. Chris Griffith. I lead the organization and oversee customer engagement for StarPoint Technologies. Bring about a 27-year career to the table around analytics, reporting, database technologies, high availability, disaster recovery. Done a little bit of everything over the course of my career. We started StarPoint in 2008. We're a bit unique in that our sole focus is analytics, master data management, business intelligence, and reporting. And we're proud of the fact that we're the longest standing Infor Burst Analytics partner, alliance partner that they have. In that time, we've won multiple awards, including being named the #1 Infor Analytics partner back-to-back for 2020 and 2021. Just really delighted to be here with the team today. Thanks, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Okay, Skylar, do you want to introduce yourself next, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. Welcome, everybody. I'm Skylar Tinker. I'm practice lead at StarPoint, which Chris just introduced. And I've worked in the tech space for almost 15 years. 10 of those have been specifically around business intelligence and analytics and master data management. I've kind of done everything from being a DBA to a report developer. You name it, I've probably done it. I've worked with a number of verticals, healthcare, government, military, distribution, manufacturing, and worked with about every tool you can imagine, but most extensively the Infor Platform. And then most recently, I've led some development efforts at StarPoint around some solutions that you may see today. So back to you, Mike.
Great. Thanks, Skylar. And rounding out our panel is Chris Hunt.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Chris Hunt. I'm the principal consultant here at StarPoint Technologies. So that means that I head up our technical consulting team, which is composed of analytics consultants, data integration, application integration consultants, database consultants, and more strategic consulting that we do around either, analytics or data or what have you. So I am head of that team, and in that capacity, I get to work with a lot of different Infor teams, to their consulting teams, to engineering and what have you, and the great people such as Rana that we have here today. So that's what I do. Thank you, Mike.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris, and everybody for the introduction. So why don't we go ahead and jump into our topic today? Folks in the audience, please remember the chat line's open, so feel free to start posting your questions. I will ask you to keep the questions on the topic of decision intelligence, right? For Industry 4.0, and remind folks that we can't do tech support here in this kind of an event. So please refrain from asking about specific technical questions. So let's get this started with how about Chris Griffith, if you could tell us a little bit about StarPoint and your experience with Infor Technologies.
Yeah, so as I highlighted, right, I mean, we actually came to engage with Infor through the Burst acquisition. And so we are the longest standing active alliance partner that Infor has that specializes in Burst and in the analytics technologies. Um, and so that's how our partnership actually started with Infor. But it's been an exciting time since Infor came into the picture, because really what Infor provided the opportunity to do was uh, leverage some of the complementary technologies around Burst, right, like Infor OS and Coleman and others, to really provide broader capabilities, broader solutions to our customers. And a lot of that work that's been done on behalf of customer projects that we've delivered in the past really gave rise to some of the solutions that I think we're going to highlight here today. And I think, that's really important, right? Because what Infor does is really provide you with a depth and breadth of capabilities. But ultimately, it's how you implement and how you apply those technologies to your businesses, to the processes in your businesses, where the difference comes, right? And that's where, a company like StarPoint really comes into play. And we're excited about, not just the partnership and capabilities that the Infor partnership brings to StarPoint, but how we can go to market together to help our customers really solve some big problems that they have.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Chris. Thank you. So, Chris Hunt, how about if you start off telling us a little bit about the types of customers that you guys are working with Industry 4.0? I mean, anybody else can jump in, but I thought I'd start with you, Chris.
Yeah. So just kind of thinking about that, what pertains here are a variety of companies, any kind of manufacturing company, for example, or distribution company, typically asset heavy companies such as those that either have equipment that are producing products or components or what have you, that want to, both monitor all sorts of things and measure all sorts of things along that line. Is it up? Is it running efficiently? Is it productive, efficient? um, what am I getting a return on this piece of equipment? Do I need to invest more in maintenance? All those sorts of questions are the kind of questions you have. And that also then transfers into companies that maybe are more distribution oriented or have that as well. Maybe that have a fleet of vehicles that they need to maintain. They need to track, do we need to add routes? Do the routes we have, are they producing for us? Are they profitable for us? Those kinds of things as well. All manner of things that could be down to, fuel consumption, or more strategic, like that kind of route example that I put out there. And that then also transfers into companies with a diverse product portfolio, for example. And that could be, they could be looking at things from a product management standpoint that, um, you know, what's my stock levels? Do I have, the proper days or weeks of inventory on hand? What is my revenue for this product? How does it compare to past periods? What is, those kinds of things. And particularly if you have a diverse portfolio that has a hierarchy associated with it, from a product line or brand down to a, um, you know, product category or what have you, and further down to those individual products, just being able to see those kind of statistics for them. And for a lot of users within an organization, just being able to browse that catalog of products that they do have, how they associate it, maybe kit wise or component wise, with other things that they may be selling or servicing for their customers and what have you. Other customers, just kind of round out the conversation, could be outside of that, could be just, physical assets such as real estate. So residential wise, we have customers that have those things that, they just want to track, you know, things like, I don't know, occupancy metrics and maintenance metrics and things like that associated with them. So that's the, set of customers that we see quite often for these sorts of solutions.
So, Chris, if I can add to that, to me, typically when you talk about Industry 4.0, you think about manufacturing, you think about distribution. But if you look at technology, that's being leveraged across different verticals in different walks of life. On the services side, optimizing supply chain, to your point, right? And then also creating efficiencies for employees in the operating room, right? Like finding the right piece of equipment at the right time, and maybe analyzing your employee profiles to make sure that they're a right fit, right? So I see technology being used across the board to create efficiencies in different walks of life.
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, thanks
Definitely.
for that. So I got another question that I'd like to ask the panel is, so what are some of the key challenges that you're consistently seeing with some of the customers in these verticals?
Yeah, I can start on that one as well. I think most of those, or a lot of those, are the diversity of systems that they have. A lot of these come down to data integration challenges, um, and then getting the data from those pieces of equipment or trucks or vehicles and what have you, getting it out, getting it in with the other systems that may have a slightly different view from a data standpoint of those same items or products or customers or what have you. A lot of those challenges persist. Other challenges include just putting it to use at that point, and that could mean having the capabilities to represent better than just a dump of data onto people that information. And that we talk a lot about sophistication and technology and what have you, but a lot of our customers, I think, are challenged not only necessarily in those areas, but maybe into a accessible, concise, meaningful way to consume that information that doesn't require them to, spend hours and hours training their frontline people in their usage, that are easy to use, meaningful, that get right to the point on here's what things look like, here's what's good, here's what's bad, here's what you need to be concerned with right now with what you're looking at or within your role or job. So there's a lot of that actually. Just, can we get things digestible and accessible and simple for people to understand? There's a lot of those challenges as well that really shouldn't be overlooked when we're looking at solutions. We like to get into the complexity and sophistication, different tools and what have you, but really making it meaningful is a challenge.
And then,
Like,
Chris, analysis paralysis is another issue, right? When you have stuff like too much stuff thrown at you, what's relevant? So making sure, to your point, that it's easy, consumable, and specific and actionable, I think is key.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the important point here is to try to make the application of the technology practical, right? And a lot of the ways that we approach this is through looking at specific use cases. So it may be a use case from the shop floor, it might be a sales use case, an inventory use case, even a supply chain use case, right? Maybe it's a predictive maintenance type of use case. But we want to look at those things in sort of these sort of very practical perspectives. But the point is that when you look at organizations in this space, especially in distribution and manufacturing, right, those are all use cases that align to these sort of end-to-end processes that exist in these organizations, right? One of the things that we like to say is that, hey, we like to provide that decision intelligence and the insights from the shop floor to your customer's door. Well, what does that really imply, right? That implies that we're looking at our manufacturing and our efficiencies and our waste. We're looking at our operational execution. We're looking at our financial performance along that entire way. We're looking at sales, and we're looking at how inventory aligns to our sales strategy where our sales actually occur. So all of these things sort of begin to paint this broader picture of how these processes are performing. But again, it's a very practical approach to how we take these sort of functional concepts, these functional areas along these processes. And I think that that's really a distinction here, is that a lot of people are interested in these technologies, but they're challenged with how do I actually apply them. That's the approach that we take, and when we engage with these customers and really say, hey, where do we begin, and how can we have the biggest impact?
And one thing I would add is, like, while a lot of these customers, we see, similar challenges at each one of them, some of the methodology that we bring to the table when we come into that, so that we can have that life cycle of a product or whatever from the shop floor to the customer door, like Chris said, is working and understanding that, hey, while multiple customers may look at the same type of part of the process, we also know that you may not do it the same way. And so we work with you, and kind of understand what you're trying to do to make it the most impactful for your business, even though the industry has a way they do it. So.
Yeah, great conversation. Thanks, everybody. So let me get another sort of direction. I'm going to mix in an audience question here in a second as well. But before I do that, I've got one for Chris Griffith. We've been talking a lot about the investment you guys have been making in developing your own solutions and accelerators. Can you tell us a little bit about how those align to Industry 4.0?
Yeah, for sure. So, over the past 2.5 years, we've invested a lot in developing, these accelerators, and we call them accelerators because, in a lot of projects, analytic projects in particular, right? I mean, you get asked to build out bespoke solutions, okay, and that takes time. It's not a wrong approach; it's just a approach. But what we've seen in particular, as it relates to companies in manufacturing, distribution, and fleet, et cetera, we were seeing a lot of these same sort of concepts and use cases over and over again. And a lot of these companies, they're run very similarly, right? The challenges are very similar. The execution is very similar. And so we recognized that there was an opportunity to bring together some of this IP and bring it together in a meaningful format. And we put this together in a set of accelerators that we call IDM. Now, within the context of our solutions, IDM stands for Insights Driven Management. And ultimately, that's what we're after, right? Is that practical application of technology to really help customers drive and make better decisions and drive better overall business performance. And so we've brought these concepts together, right? For instance, one of the solutions that we've brought to market is around products. So it puts a company's products really at the center of the universe. And we provide all sorts of insights in there around how our sales are performing, how our inventory strategy and execution is performing, even supply chain, because that really has over the past couple of years become a real area of concern and challenge for a lot of companies. Is how can we get better insights, because it impacts everything that we do after that and ultimately impacts our customers. And so again, bringing that together, giving these customers that single pane of glass, helping them overcome some of those challenges that we talked about earlier around data integration, et cetera, and allow them to deploy a very powerful solution very, very quickly, very commonly in under 90 days, right, allows us to accelerate that time to value and really have an impact in the near term for these customers. And so again, I know that's what we're going to highlight today, is some of these solutions that fit well in that manufacturing, fleet, distribution type of space, but either put your assets or your collection of assets, whether they're your fleet trucks, your facilities, your manufacturing and distribution facilities, or your products at the center of the universe, so that whether you're somebody that's operating on a shop floor or even operating a piece of equipment, all the way up to an executive team, they all have that single pane of glass and are getting that view of how their business is performing along some of those key processes that we identify.
Great. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and take one of the audience questions now. And I'll start off with an answer, and then if anybody else wants to chime in, and then we're going to probably switch gears in a moment to our next set of topics. But I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly, but Hiba Mahmood has a question about, was COVID-19 one of the motivators to study the practical applications more deeply? And I'll start off with the answer of that is that one of the comments I'll make is last year, one of our customers not only signed completely remotely during COVID, they went live with one of our cloud ERPs in over 20 countries. Not one single Infor employee or a partner step foot on premise. They did it completely remotely from their side as well as our side. So I think that's a really interesting topic to talk about when customers are thinking about the cloud. And there's a lot of technical reasons, but that's, I think, a really awesome thing to think about. Is it can change, the cloud can really help you change how you think about how you operate. Would any of you folks on the panel like to chime in with your experience around that?
So, Mike, I'd like to go first. So, one of the first things that comes to mind, if you talk about like what started or triggered or jump started these transformations we are talking about, we saw, I mean, especially with COVID, demand on PPE, supply chain shortages with respect to PPE. We had requests pouring in from our customers to get visibility, right? Like near real-time visibility into the inventory to make sure they're able to plan and manage with their inventory levels specific to PPE in an effective fashion, and make sure that they're creating that optimized patient experience across the board, right? So we had a lot of requests from our customers from that perspective as to how to shift their processes, make them digital, and then also create efficiencies in terms of managing inventory and what have you.
Yeah, back on those accelerators Chris was talking about from our perspective, yes, this was a motivation. And one of the things, I mean, I'm sure everyone on here is aware of how hot the issue of supply chain is these days, right? And so one of the things that we really ran into some customers were trying to track the movement of their raw materials or track the movement of their finished goods. And when was it going to get where it was going to get, or when were we getting more stock of what we had ordered? And so we had a couple instances where we had some customers that were having some customer satisfaction issues because they were trying to map together these disparate data sets, and we were able to step in and build out a module with some of these accelerators to really help them and achieve their goals.
Yeah. And prior to the pandemic, I mean, these things existed before the pandemic for sure, but I think the pandemic highlighted a few things such as supply chain and what have you, and also other areas where the old ways of getting a competitive advantage weren't as available. You can't just get on a plane and head to a customer site and talk to them face to face. So in this case, having more of that, providing them intelligence about their, how they relate to you and how you can serve them better, and knowing a bit more about them and the products that you are selling to them and could be selling to them are things that really help that kind of situation once the pandemic hit, essentially.
Great. Thanks for those responses, everybody. I think now I want to transition over into the demo sort of part of where we wanted to go next. And sort of to start us off, one thing I was thinking about, Chris Griffith, was we talked about accelerators a little bit. And because I know that at Infor, we mean a little bit, we probably have a different meaning of like implementation accelerator. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that at StarPoint?
Yeah, so like I said, we took a lot of work that we've done with a lot of companies, in this space, and tried to bring it together in a meaningful way. And so, what this is are a collection of solutions that essentially you can drop into your Infor Cloud Suite environment. And because they are pre-integrated, because the data models exist, because the analytics and everything that you see that work has already been done. It's very, very easy to deploy and stand up right inside of that environment. And so that's what we mean by accelerators. But be clear that there's a lot of development time and heavy lifting that's been done from an integration perspective to help our customers. And with that being said, that while it plays great with Infor solutions, we also recognize when we go into these organizations that they have a very heterogeneous vendor application environment, right? And so they may be running an Infor Cloud Suite ERP, but maybe they're using somebody else's WMS, for instance, right? because of the capabilities of Burst and the Infor OS platform, we really have the ability to integrate with data no matter where it lies or what architecture, if it's in a private cloud instance, if it's on-prem, it doesn't really matter, right? If the data is somewhere, there's a really good chance we can get to it to help fill out this picture, right? This broader picture along these processes that we've been talking about. And again, that's a big part of the value that we're trying to bring, is really the decision intelligence capabilities along all of these different processes that are really key, really, and related to each other, frankly, right? We talked about supply chain, we talked about inventory, we talked about sales. All of those things are connected, right? They're not siloed functional areas in these organizations. And again, we recognize that's where a lot of these companies are challenged in getting that broader view. And so we've really seen a high level of interest and uptake on what we're going to see today and what Skylar's going to walk us through, because these things, they've really hit a mark, right? They've really helped address some of the biggest challenges and the practical application of these technologies. But again, we're providing the level of insight, that sort of end user experience, that whether you're an operational guy all the way up to an executive in the organization, you really need in order to do your job the best that you can.
Okay. Yeah. So Chris, you want me to go ahead and show maybe some of this a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we go ahead and bring it up, and we can start. It's always fun to talk about it, but a picture's worth 1,000 words. So maybe Skylar can initially talk us through the manufacturing shop floor use case, and this is again focused on the asset side of things, right? We'll show you the more product focused sister application here in a second, but again, this really puts your facilities at the center of the universe. And so Skylar's going to walk us through that talk track. And certainly, as you guys have questions, welcome those questions. Go ahead and put them out here.
So Skylar, as you're walking through this, could you please highlight, how do you help customers diagnose issues on the assembly line?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. So what you see here, like Chris said, is really we're looking inside of a facility. And so we know, a facility can be an asset in and of itself, but it also has an ecosystem of assets, really within it. And so you can see just from this facility perspective, just some overall metrics about what's going on, your revenue, cost of ownership of, assets in this facility, how many units are those lines producing, that type of stuff, how many machines are on those lines. And then we're calling out a few areas, kind of going to your question, Ron, of how many machines have elevated downtime percentages, or how many of them are critical and poor condition type machines. And I could click through, you can see that's a button. That's going to go take me directly to those 3 machines, and I can take a look at them. But really, when it comes to diagnosing, we've got a couple things going on here. And so just looking at this, my eyes immediately start to notice something, which is, first of all, we've got some different lines in this facility kind of mapped out here. One of them is showing me that we've got a little bit of an issue, right? I can see that on this one that we have an elevated, downtime on those machines, probably going back to these 3. I would imagine those are on that line. And also it doesn't look like we're producing as many units. And so this is a place where I want to start kind of thinking. And when I look immediately to the right over here, which is really showing a mashup of how much are my lines producing versus how many problems am I having? That's what this blue and black line is production versus problems. You can see line 1 is a little bit different than the rest of the lines. It's not producing as many, and it's got some issues. And so if I want to investigate or diagnose, like Rana said, I can come in and let's just kind of constrain our view down to this line 1. And you'll see it's going to take us down from those 116 machines. So now we're only looking at 29. And then let's say even further, right? I don't need to go look through all 29 and figure out where my issue is. We already have mapped out down here I can look at my most critical pieces of machinery, which are these up here. So those are the ones that have the most interruptions as well logged with them. So I can come in and just immediately grab these and continue my investigation even further. So we went from 116 machines immediately down to just 13. And very quickly, right, we're in the weeds. We don't have to do a lot of investigation. We can do and try to figure out what's the issue, what's the problem.
So Skylar, can you actually drill into the specific asset? And I see that you've narrowed it down to like 13 machines and what have you. Now, can I like drill deeper and look at a particular asset and see
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah, for sure. So let's go ahead and do that, right? I can click through right here, and we're just going to go grab these 13 machines here that are making up my critical assets in line one. So all those 13 we saw should be mapped here. And if I do my math correctly, when I scroll down, if I can count, that does look like there are 13. But if you remember what brought us here was, hey, we saw a lot of interruptions. And so, obviously, we've got some conditional alerting on here. This is how much we're spending on these assets. And this kind of triggers, stands out to me. But the thing I really want to pay attention to is like our interruptions, right? That's what brought us here. And, when I just visually look across these, this first one does look like it has a pretty high number of interruptions compared to the rest of these. And so I'd want to go here, right? I immediately want to just jump in. I'm going to click through on this arm. And again, we went from that high level just to looking at the lines in a facility to now looking at this arm. And once it loads, you'll see. Just a second. I think the screen's low right now. Let me turn off my camera.
So Skylar, as this is rendering, obviously there's a whole lot of data points you're bringing in. So could you talk to some of the data consolidation, data integration aspects here?
Yeah, that's a great question. This screen is probably one of my favorite screens to illustrate that because there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of different data points from a lot of different disparate systems. You have ERP here, you have asset management and maintenance data here, workforce management data here because you can see operators, IoT, all that stuff is here, and we're leveraging just the power of Infor Platform, which really it stings at getting data from all those disparate places and marrying them together into a consistent data model so that we can do some analysis on them. So a good example of this is, hey, we can see total cost of ownership. We can see, hey, this arm was a problem and we're not producing as many units as we thought. But where we can put all this information together is how much is it costing me when this arm comes down? So I know from our ERP, we're planning, we know what we're going to spend. I know from maintenance what we're spending on it. But then if I have to take it down for maintenance, what are we going to do? How much is that going to cost me to do that? There are all those disparate data sets to produce a metric that kind of help customers understand, hey, this is what I know I'm going to be out when I deal with this, or this is what this is going to impact me on. So.
This is fantastic, Skylar. So you mentioned IoT and you talked about pulling in sensor data. So is that real time? Could you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So these you can see these up here. They'll refresh as I'm talking. And you can see one of them is out of there you go, showing a kind of a critical threshold here. And within this, we really look at IoT in two ways. So the first one is real time, right? So, near real time, looking at them here where you can see the latest sensor read up to, 5, 10, 15 seconds ago. But then the second way we bring in IoT data is really to trend and look across it and do some analysis. So I want to know what's going on with it now, but what about also knowing what happened with it in the history to know how many times am I having an incident? How many times has this vertical vibration sensor been a problem? Is there is there a lemon here? Is a part? Do we need to change sourcing of a certain part? So we use IoT history to kind of inform that, and also build out some things around time between failures, or averaging that, or feeding things like Infor Coleman for that, to understand and do some decisioning around it.
Having that predictive aspect and being proactive in terms of maintenance and calibrating your assets is huge, Skylar. Now, for our audience here, could you highlight what are some of the common data sources that you would feed to create an analysis and visibility similar to what we have here?
Yeah, so that, an ERP is a good example. An asset management, maintenance, those are two really big ones to really bring in that work order data, and to bring in just kind of your criticality around your assets, various scores of what condition they're in, that type of thing. Operator data, so your workforce. And you can see down here a couple things around operators, which is showing how well are they running machinery versus how many incidents do they have. And so you can use that workforce information to really bring in put that on a shop floor, gamify it. We've talked to customers about that type of thing. And so all these different things, come from different places, but we can bring them together here on that dashboard to give you that consistent view for sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for that, Skylar. I did have one question though. I noticed Coleman on there, and I know you and I have talked about that in the past. What are you guys doing with Coleman?
I know, Mike, I think you actually worked on it.
I did. So yeah, I was just wanting to know what are your, I know it's new for you guys, but what are your plans for it? And so I did see a note that, so Coleman, for those that may not know, is the machine learning part of offering of the Infor OS technology platform. You can see the name of it or the brand of it in the top right of Skylar's screen there. So Skylar, can you tell us a little bit about how you're using predictive technology now and where you guys might be going as you develop it into your product?
Sure. So for what you're seeing here is really some decisioning around a sensor read. So what it's telling me, just kind of give you the obvious use case here is, hey, if this sensor is if this problem is left unchecked, then there's an 87% chance of failure in the next 7 days. That's what that's telling me. So we need to address this. Coleman is kind of predicting that this is an issue that can create a critical issue, a critical problem for us. But some other areas where we're bringing this into the asset world is out of the box. Coleman has some different models that they bring to the table, and one of those is predictive maintenance, right? Understanding when is the best time to take an arm or a piece of equipment offline to be able to do some work on it, or when is the best time to do that work based on prior work. So that's one area. And there's a couple other, but that's really one of the main ones that are right in focus.
That's great, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks, Skylar. So we've looked at the operation health of assets on the assembly line that you're just showing us, Skylar, or whether we're assembling or building a product. But what about if we wanted to drill into the actual products themselves that you're making and that sort of performance?
So that would be one of our other accelerators. And like you kind of said there, there's a natural tie between them. We really see them as coexisting because, these facilities, they're making and distributing products. And so then I want to see what happens with my products once I've actually once they've left, and, what are my sales and inventory, supply chain around those things. And so that would really introduce our next accelerator, which, like I said, is the core. And so there's a couple of different underlying components of this. Really, a lot of this would be driven by an ERP system. But like I said, quoting information, sales information, inventory information, supply chain around those things. And understanding your warehouses, all of those would be in view of like what we offer in this and the other thing.
So Skylar, could you talk about, like, I see, to your point, a whole bunch of KPIs. How are you sourcing or diagnosing the sales aspects of these products here?
Yeah. So, I mean, you see your standard sales KPIs here and open orders, but just like how you saw with assets where, our goal with both of these accelerators is to give you the opportunity to be able to, as I like to say, 3 clicks to a phone call, right? You want to go from the high level down in the weeds very quickly to be able to understand, hey, what is the problem? What's the opportunity? What's the thing I'm looking at? And when you get to that low level, view, do I have everything available to me to take action? Maybe I know who it needs to go take action, or I know what I need to do. And so we brought that into every single one of these screens. You saw me do that on the last one with, understanding what's going on with a assembly line and with a specific piece of machinery. But, specifically here to your question, Ron, like, what are we doing with products? Well, we're looking at sales. So what would be, one of the things we'd want to know? Well, when I see this, I see, hey, these are all the places I'm shipping my product to. I can see some segmentation of my product over here around, what type of product am I sending to what channel, what customers are driving my sales. An interesting call out here is you see 50% of my business is being driven by the top 10 customers that I have. And so that's, interesting things to know. I can click on these and go drill into a customer and understand rebates and just by keeping that customer one of my top 10 customers. Or if I just want to explore, like, hey, what products are selling well and look for opportunities, right? I can come in and click up here and just look at the intersection of these two things and see how is my appliances. It looks like it's one of my hottest areas. How are my appliances selling to my retail customers? And then I can see all my different customers and what's selling to them. So we want to keep looking for opportunity. Let's just go look at one of our biggest ones, right? Which would be laundry appliances to Lowe's. And I can go click on that, and it's going to drill in even further. And now I can see where are the 4 different locations in my product to. But just in the spirit of like, hey, understanding some trends and diagnosing some opportunity, let's take this for example. Our hottest sold product to Lowe's, which seems to be this dryer set here, isn't even being sold to one of those stores. So what is that trend? Why is it? And it's not a hot seller with the other 2. Is it something I need to understand geographically? Is it something that store is doing from a pricing standpoint? What's happening there? And that begins to open the door for a conversation. And then even down here, I can see, hey, this year versus last year, some of these products are not selling nearly as well as they did last year, and other ones are selling way better than they did last year. And so that, from a product development team, why is that? Is it a new model? Is it an old model? Is it not interesting? Did someone find something wrong with it? What is that?
So Skylar, could you speak to, the thought behind leveraging maps and then using Google Maps specifically? Could you highlight or speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. Let me reload this. So, like I said, give it just a second. I think the screen share is being a little challenging. So what we did here is Burst does have a capable mapping tool out of the box as part of the Infor platform. But what we did is we created a custom integration with Google Maps. And that was really because we wanted to be able to leverage multiple inputs and multiple data layers with custom visuals in there. So for example, here, we're doing some dynamic clustering of sales in a region. So you can see there's some tightly packed regions here I could drill into, but we also are doing some clustering of sales at a location. And so what we wanted to be able to do was not only just say, hey, this is a hot location. We wanted to be able to say, hey, when I come in and click on this, it's going to pop open a thing. It's going to pop open a little window where I can see what customer is it, who is it. But I also would expect, since this was a darker pen, it would have far more sales to it, which it does. And then I can see an aggregate at the top, but then in detail, what products are they all ordering, and what are my margins and all that good stuff. And then I can click through from this and go look at a dashboard for that product, right? So again, a lot of different ways to really drill in and diagnose. And so Google Maps was one way we were able to just really expand and extend the capability for that.
Thank you, Skylar. Very cool.
So one of the things I was thinking about as you're going through that, Skylar, is that a lot of companies have thousands or even tens of thousands of products. And, what are some of the ways that, I know that some of the things you're driving that here with that segmentation, but what's some of the other ways that you're using to pull that attention to the key ones that people should look at?
So just took us over while you're talking to our Start Center, because I think this is a really powerful screen that kind of helps understand or it kind of helps explain a little bit of how we're doing that. Now, this customer that we're looking at this is just like a small sampling use case. They're you can think of them as like a Samsung or an LG. They're a global electronics manufacturer and distributor, and they have 188 total products in their catalog. Now, the scale of the number of products doesn't matter, right? The bigger the scale, the more important this screen becomes, because of those 188 products, or of the total catalog of products, we have already kind of utilized some of those pre-built data models to say, hey, okay, so how many of those products are in these different categories? How many of them are trending? Meaning we've seen a spike in sales or a spike in demand, or how many of them are improving or declining in demand, or aren't leaving our warehouse, or we don't have enough product, or critical, which thankfully this company didn't have any, which would be the intersection of, hey, we see an increase in demand and not enough stock to meet that demand. And then you can see immediately below it all the different things around what are the top 10 things in all these categories that are really making it impactful for that. Top 10 customers, products, and my different distribution locations that are all components of that. And I can click on any one of these and drill in and go look at a dashboard for some analysis on that. And then I can also click and flip over. If I just want to look at these 5 trending products, I can do that. It's going to flip over and take me to these 5. And I can see everything kind of updated for just those 5. I can see, what does it look like? Who's selling them? What are they? How am I stocking them, and this kind of sticks out because these are selling a lot, but this warehouse isn't turning them over very quickly, and there's a lot of stock. That's a place I'd want to drill into, right? So there's a couple ways we're doing that.
Skylar, can I ask you a question? My apologies,
sure.
didn't mean to interrupt you there. But I'm sure the question that's going through the audience mind here is, we saw a lot of KPIs on the Start Center. Are those configurable? Like, I mean, different customers would measure maybe inventory turns different way. Are those configurable?
Yeah. So this is a great question. So, all those things that you saw customizable, we have a way that we do it out of the box, but it's very flexible. So if there's a customer who has a different business logic or way that they would handle it, we can tweak it, we can amend it, we can change that. Even those data buckets that you saw, so the trending, the improving, the declining, those are customizable. Not only that, they're extendable. One of those doesn't make sense for a customer, we can drop that off, we can add something different, right? If there's a price or a margin threshold someone would want to look at, like, hey, these are products that might be able to be good candidates to improve the margins around them. We can call out those things too. So that's one of those areas where the impactfulness of customizing the accelerator really comes out.
And that's huge. That's huge,
Yeah.
Right? Being able to sort of customize this, configure this, and make it your own and apply to your landscape is huge.
For sure.
Yeah, that's some great stuff you've showed us, Skylar. And I'd love to see more, and I'm sure our audience would as well. But for time constraints, I think we need to transition into our final topic and then head into the close. So one question I had teed up for Chris Hunt was around why did you guys choose the Infor platform and specifically Infor Burst? Because that was also one of the audience questions earlier to solve this problem.
Yeah. So I'll tackle the Burst part of it first. So what you saw was built on that platform because what it gives us, there's a lot of things that we would otherwise have to build, right? Is both a back-end queryable platform that is built for high performance querying at a high level, drill down to a very low level as well. Things like authorization, authentication that we don't have to build, security that we don't have to build as well. So our exercise then is just to create the solution to do what we want it to do, essentially. So we're not having to deal with so many of the mechanicals of just standing up an application and building out every little bit of a UI and things like that. So this gets us directly to pulling the data that we want to pull, doing with it what we want to do, and displaying the things that we want to display. So that's why we built that on Burst. A lot of things that we don't want to necessarily have to mess with are already done for us. From a broader platform standpoint, the reason that Infor is a good platform to work with is that it has a broad diversity of components on the platform, whether that's an analytics platform on Burst, data infrastructure, coming from the data fabric, those data pipelines in there, to all of the applications that they offer their customers, and the fact that those are dealing with the workflow sorts of activities around these assets, products, customers, what have you, and that they're sources of data for these things, whether that be sales or financials or maintenance or what have you. So those are all a part of the platform. Going into the getting into the AI and ML components that we talked about a little bit earlier too are definitely a part of it. And that's an ecosystem that provides a lot of capability, both from a breadth and depth standpoint, but it's also an evolving ecosystem that continues to pick up more and more capability as time goes on. And it's a platform in the sense that it is works together and allows us to build the things we want to build. That's what a good platform does, is allows you to then take the components that you need, put them into the solution you want to build and move forward, without having to make so many things on your own or deal with kind of clunky tools from a diversity of vendors and other parties. So that's what the Infor platform gives us there.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I mean, I think something else I would like to maybe ask Skylar was, um, I don't think you guys have a data science team at StarPoint, do you?
Not specifically, no.
Right. I mean, so one of the things I was thinking of when you're talking about adding in Coleman was that was another reason, that the Infor platform was useful as you built your accelerators. You're able to take advantage of the work of our data science teams and use them in your products. I mean, I think that's cool. So
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah.
Ron, go ahead. Sorry.
No, Mike, I was just asking, and I wanted to highlight that, like we talked about burst and why burst, and specifically when you're looking at Industry 4.0, being able to consume this where you are, making it portable, right? That mobile aspect is important. So just want to highlight that this can be consumed on the mobile device as well, and your interaction is native to the platform that you're using, right? Technology, whether it's iOS or Android and what have you. So you can consume this on the go without a lot of maintenance on the back end. Back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Rana. Did want to take Mohammed Khan, I believe, he was asking a question about the solution is based on modifications. And I just wanted Chris to give, Chris Griffith, if you could take a minute to talk about how I feel like your product is built like as standard product. And I remember something about as long as the data sources conform to your expected data model. Can you talk a little bit about that and what's standardized about your product and your accelerators?
Yeah, I mean, I think conceptually a lot of the, going back to the reference I made earlier about use cases, right? I mean, companies all have these very common use cases, but how they may want to measure, right, their performance in those use cases is where we will see some distinction. And so I think what we've done is we've essentially given a framework, right, that gets you, let's say 80% there from a capabilities perspective, but offers the flexibility, to adapt it to your specific environment and how you want to see or measure the world, right? And I want to be clear too, this isn't, none of our solutions are meant to be the be all end all solution for Industry 4.0. What they're really meant to do is to give customers a head start, right? To really accelerate their maturity along that curve, right? That analytics maturity model type of curve. But it's meant to be like a lot of analytics initiatives. It's meant to be a living project, right? And this is something that is meant for you to carry forward and continue to extend and build upon. What we want to do is give you the ability to not start from ground zero, right? From that first step, and really be able to recognize value really very quickly, especially from your investments that you've already made in Infor, whether it's ERP or WMS, or from an analytics or data lake perspective, right? The true value of those technologies is, what do those platforms, right? What do those components as they come together as a platform? What do they enable, right? Because when we look at things like individual capabilities like ERP or AI and ML, those are great, right? They're components, they're building blocks, if you will. But it's really how do those things fit together, and what do they enable for you as a customer is where the differentiation comes from. And I really think Infor is ahead of the curve in that area.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that is, sorry, Rana. One thing I would add to that is that we oftentimes, when we have these conversations about our accelerators, like Chris said, they're not designed to be the end all, but also sometimes customers are like, well, we're not there yet. We don't have this type of stuff to enable that. And that's okay. Like we can, these things are, can be a roadmap if they can take a life of their own at some point, but there can also be a roadmap to get you where you need to go. And they can be modularly deployed and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't have to be we got to do the whole thing in one go. It can be, hey, we can get there in smaller steps.
It's a great point.
So Chris, I mean, the one question that comes to mind, actually, I had two questions, but because of the limited time we have, I'll stick to one, right? Like when you're looking at revenue, you're looking at margins, you're looking at performance, some of these data points are sensitive, right? Like how can you control the access, and could you speak to the security aspect of the platform?
Yeah, I can do that. Or can at least start us out. So there's generally, 4 or so things that we secure. And, in this case, the platform allows us to do so. It's, what tools can a user use? Can they, are they view read only? Can they build their own analytics, reporting, what have you? What content can they see from a dashboard report standpoint? And then a couple of kind of a forked one is what data are they allowed access to from a field standpoint? Can they see margin, or can they see, financials, or just inventory or sales or what have you? What types of information can they see, or can they drill down into people's personal information, or down to a individual contributor on a factory line or things like that, and look at their statistics? Or are they looking at things at more of a high level? And then the last thing being, okay, I've got access to a particular piece of data or a category of information, but do I only see my portion from my region, as opposed to another region, and what have you, like that? So we secure all of those things, and the platform allows us to do so, via data-driven aspects of this. What do we have from a role standpoint that comes from the other parts of the platform, InfoOS, the ERP controls, the same things there and whatnot. So yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Chris. So, guys, this is fantastic. I mean, I really appreciate the time you guys have taken to show us the accelerators and the things that you guys have been working on since the last time we've chatted. I did have one or two, actually two ending questions for Chris Griffith, if you don't mind. Where are you guys having success with these accelerators? And then before we do the closing, can you tell us where people can find you guys?
Yeah, for sure. And those are great questions. So not really at liberty to mention any names, right? But, what you saw today really fits well within that manufacturing and distribution space. Also for companies that, maybe have a large fleet that they need to manage. We're seeing a lot of uptake, but, back to the earlier reference about COVID-19 and the impact on supply chain, every organization we're talking to these days has been impacted, has had their supply chain impacted. And so again, in that manufacturing and production space, distribution, we're really seeing these solutions resonate. And I know we didn't get much into the supply chain side of things today, but there's a lot more to see, maybe a future episode. But I would say in those areas in particular, Mike, the companies in those verticals, from small to large, frankly, they all have very similar challenges. And it's not just related around supply chain or inventory management. There's also the time to value. There's the data integration challenges. There's the desire and need to leverage things like AI and ML, but companies are struggling to get either past those challenges or challenged on where to even start. And so we think within the context of Industry 4.0, these solutions fit very well. And again, really give these organizations that head start and address some of those key, either technical, functional, operational challenges that they're faced with every day. To your point of where they can find us, we'd always encourage you to reach out through your Infor contact. But you can also find us online at starpointtech.com, or you can email us directly at info@starpointtech.com. We'd love to have a conversation with you about, what can be done, what's been done, and how we can really help you guys move forward. So thank you for the opportunity, Mike, and the Infor team. We really appreciate your partnership.
Yeah, thank you guys. So with that, I'd like to end the session. And I not only want to thank the panel for their time and expertise, I'd also like to thank our audience for joining us today. It's very much appreciated. And to get notified about future live events like this, please like and subscribe our Infor Technology platform YouTube channel or our corporate page on LinkedIn. And I want to say have a great day, everyone, and thanks for watching.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.